Papyrus!
Somebody call a doctor.
I want a bigger logo! You can't handle a bigger logo.
G'day, this is the Dr. Branding Podcast. I'm your branding Dr. Frank. The surgery is open. Let's answer our next patient's question. Of course, we're going to diagnose the problem, prescribe a solution, and today this question comes from Michelle here in Australia, and she asks, we want our brand to stay present on social media, but I can't drag my team away from their work to do social content. Do I need to do it myself, ask my receptionist to do it, or do I really need to get someone in to do this for us? Michelle, thank you for this question. I think this is one that comes up for many different kinds of businesses, and I'm sure it's a question that many social media managers would be addressing this kind of pain point. And I'll address it because I'm not a social media manager. I'm the branding doctor here. It's somebody that is trying to help your brand grow, to help your brand stay aware, stay present, stay active, as something that can help provide a business with a conduit between business and customer. I'll still answer this kind of question, even though it's not directly in my alley. So Michelle, let me diagnose this. From an outsider's perspective, I don't know what kind of business you might have here, but in essence, what we're trying to do is decide what needs to be done, because the prerogative, it seems like, what you need to do and what you want to do, which is a good thing that you're acknowledging that you do want to stay present, your brand stay present and active and top of mind, is this opportunity of social media content. It's something every business has the opportunity to do, but we're not too sure how we go about executing it as this kind of thing that gets left out. And in the colds, you might put a couple of posts up here and there every week or month or quarter or once a year maybe, and then it kind of gets forgotten about, like some lost toy that gets pushed into the back of the couch or behind the bed or something and gets forgotten about. But it is an opportunity to get your business out there, and this I think is definitely a worthwhile question for any business to consider how to execute this, especially I'm guessing this is a small business that Michelle has. And there's a few things going on here. My first guess is that, well, I think Michelle's already kind of said it here without saying it, that she doesn't have the time to potentially do it herself. Her team definitely don't. It sounds like they need to be focusing on what they're there to do day in, day out. Michelle might also not have the budget. And again, for a small business, putting money and budget into marketing in terms of promotion can be fairly limited. The cash flow might not be there. It might not be seen as a primary expense for a business to invest in, especially when the return on investment may not be all that dramatic, and especially for something like organic content. For paid content, it might be a little bit different, where you can measure return on investment. I'm getting a little bit in the weeds there, but budget consideration-wise, it might be the lower priority of expenditure in a year based on your revenue. When you've got overheads, you've got your staff to pay, like Michelle sounds like she does, and all these other factors that come into it. Do I really need to be paying for somebody to do my social media for me, or do I, pay someone in the team to do it? Whatever. And then one of the other considerations I think you could be thinking about here in this diagnosis phase is not knowing how to do it, not knowing what the best approach is to get the name of this business that Michelle has, and maybe you listening as well. How do we get that out there? How do we stay consistent? And how do we do it the right way that's going to be a good use of our time, maybe our money, and that capacity that we have with the energy to keep showing up day after day or week after week, or whatever the cadence is of showing up and staying present, as Michelle is looking to do. But what Michelle sounds like she does want to do, and I think most businesses do want to do, is be present on something like social media or any kind of media realistically, for your business to stay top of mind. We do want to do this. So there's a few don'ts. Don't have the time, don't have the budget, don't have any idea what we're doing potentially, but we do know we need to do this. And if that's the case, what I think Michelle's going through is something that I would call social left-outitis. Yeah? So this one is your social presence is being left out in the cold, like that toy behind the bed, and you feel some kind of guilt or anxiety of not staying present in your market as a brand to help drive that awareness of people understanding and learning about your brand and diving deeper into what it is you offer, and then coming in to consider buying from you or working with you, depending if you're a product brand or a service-based business, all those things. So social left-outitis. These diagnoses are fun. And this might lead to a thing that more commonly most people know as FOMO. And if you don't know what FOMO is, fear of missing out. You might look at all other competitors in your space doing, great fun things on social media, especially with their team doing, silly, fun kind of engaging things, team building things. They make you kind of feel like you should be doing that. And you don't want to copy them, obviously, but you're hesitant to do something similar because, again, you don't want to feel like you're just copying. You want to do something on your terms, but there's that fear of missing out. They've got this opportunity. They might have a very large following as well, but potentially good engagement, people coming to their business because of it, and you want to get in on that. That's perfectly natural, and essentially it can be a part of the business that you might be leaving out, not just social media, but media in general, to promote your business, to stay present, be active, and be in front of the right people, or just the likely people that would be interested in what you have to offer. If it's a doctor, if it is a branding person, if you're a plumber, if you have a store and a shop front or an e-commerce store, things like that, we need to stay presently active. So people are thinking about us and staying top of mind. But this, for many businesses, especially small businesses, is the part that we typically leave out because we don't have the capacity and the budget to really allow for that to stay present and consistent and of good quality as well. There's another bit of diagnosis there in terms of what might keep you going for the long run and staying present and active and consistent. So the prescription I would give here for social left-outitis is the first one: exhaust all the options that you have available to you, Michelle. If it's you going at it and you're like, I can't sustain this, or I don't know where to start, I don't feel like I'm good on camera. There is an episode from a previous question we've had from a patient that came in asking about getting on camera and showing yourself and showing your team, being comfortable. So I might have a listen to that one. That might be a good one to go back to. And then if you have exhausted all those options, you just don't feel it's working, it's not for you, that's okay. I mean, it's not going to be for everybody. But you do feel like there's a need for it, which there's a very valid need for it. There's the biggest opportunity most businesses have now to do so, to get their name out there, is something like social media. And it can be the cheapest way of getting your business out there for people to find out about you and stay top of mind once they do. But if you exhaust those options, the second one is to ask somebody, obviously, in your team. It doesn't sound like you want to drag away your team here, Michelle. But if there's not someone that can, or if there is someone that, let's say, could have the capacity to, there's someone appropriate in your team that can be pulled away to do some of these posts infrequently, let's say. So maybe once a week, it's just a task of theirs to create some kind of post and gets put up on your Instagram or your TikTok or your LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it is. But I would say is if you do ask them, make sure they're willing to do it, they're interested in doing it, because if they're not, and it's going to be a bit of a drag, you like anything, like especially for a creative, if I'm not into the idea of working with somebody because of their business or the type of task that it is, and it's not my kind of forte, I'm not going to be down with it. I'm not going to be interested in wanting to do it, and the result isn't going to be effective as a result. So see if they're willing and able to. If they are capable of doing this kind of thing too, can they take a good photo? Can they write? Can they do a video without stuttering over, words all the time, and can be fairly natural on camera. I'm not expecting an actor level here performance or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that's what creates good quality, but a very simple message delivered effectively and feels on brand in a way that captures that essence of your team's dynamic, or what the offering is and what the brand, message is, so that it always stays consistent and feels consistent, and you're staying present in a consistent manner. The last part to that one, in terms of approaching a staff member, is adequately compensate them for that effort. That might get somebody over the edge for that incentive to do a good job at what they are doing, rather than it just being another thing added to their day-to-day requirements of their job role. And it's like, oh, great, another thing here, but I'm not getting paid for doing something extra. You do need to kind of, I think, compensate somebody in return for an added bit of service to your business. I think that seems fair. It might only need to be modest, depends on how much you are expecting of the person. And put a question out on like a Facebook group or LinkedIn. How much should I pay an internal person maybe to do this kind of social media networking and content, to get a good sort of guesstimate of how much the going rate kind of is, or throwing a number out there to your staff member and seeing if they're interested in it, or if they can come back with a number that would make it worth their while, things like that, just to get it onto common ground so that someone feels like they're getting paid adequately for doing an additional job that is outside of their scope of possibly their speciality. They might do it on the weekend. That doesn't really matter. It's more a case of just, that fair bit of compensation. Now, if that's still not working, or you've tried all those things and they've worked for a little bit, but again, it hasn't stayed consistent, hasn't stayed effective for your business, and again, it's still lacking, then it's probably time to get somebody in. So what you're looking for here is probably a social media manager, and there are plenty out there on Instagram. It's not hard to find one. You could do a quick search and find one, and maybe find one more so in your location would be probably the best bit of advice there, where they can be constantly present. They can come to your office or wherever your place of business is, to help you shoot some content potentially, or get some ideas out of you to be able to create this content that is needed. If it's a podcast, even getting all the gear to you to be able to do that. Switch on the lights, turn on the mics, edit the thing, post the thing, and stay consistent where they might be sharing some clips and putting it onto social media again. Those kinds of things, a little bit further than just your average Instagram post, admittedly. But no matter what it is, depending on your budget and their capacity of what they can achieve for you, these are some ideas of what you could be going down that route. But if they're local to you, the better it is, rather than having someone overseas creating the content potentially, because it can help get your faces as a business owner and as a team involved in the social content, to have that connection point between your customers and your audience with you as the business, as the team. That can create a better connection point. We've got to make sure, though, that it's ROI positive. So this doesn't necessarily mean monetary. If you put out a post, you're going to see X amount of clients or customers walk in the door. Maybe not tying it to those things, because that's hard to measure, because then you need to ask each person that comes in the door, hey, how did you find out about us? Did you see that post? Which post was it? And then it's just a really awkward conversation to start with, to see that return on investment. Instead, if it was for something like an ad where you can see click-throughs and purchases as a result of it, you can get a bit of attribution there. That might not always be the case, but if it does, you might see the fruits of that labor in a way that is somewhat measurable. But it can also be psychologically ROI positive. There's a return on investment that doesn't necessarily need to be tied to the monetary investment. It can be the psychological investment. Taking the weight of this thing that you need, and it's still being done, and that gives you the confidence to go out there and sell, give somebody else the message that you would want to communicate for them to help you do that. and you know that that job is being ticked off as part of your business operations, without it being left out in the cold. Social left-out-itis is out the door. Someone has got it covered for you, and it's their job to get out there and do it. So that for you as a team, again, can be psychologically positive. It might be helping your team come together to create the content with somebody driving that is an outsider, that isn't you making, feeling awkward. Come on, team, we need to do this, whatever. You got someone outside that knows what they're doing. They can, work a crowd. They can get your team involved and engaged. And that might help boost some morale and team building within the office, and make it something that is ROI positive psychologically. Now, some other things you could do here to stay present, some other ideas. These might be some things that you've already considered, but just if not, 3 things. First, evergreen content. This means posting, let's say you do a month's worth of content and you just constantly post that every month, or you might post, something, I don't know, once or twice a week over the space of a quarter, 3 months. And then each quarter it gets repeated again and again. Or it might be every 6 months or every year, whatever the cadence is, so that you're not having to think about new content all the time. It could be slightly rehashed, so it feels a little bit new, slightly different images maybe, but the same content idea. Because a lot of the time, people are going to forget about that content, and it's just a reminder. It's like seeing an ad on TV that you've seen over and over again. The idea with it is just to stay top of mind, to stay present, to stay active with a very consistent message, potentially in that case with an evergreen piece of content, and it still is effective for your business. So that's one idea. The second one is, if the content creation effort needs to be something that you feel like it needs to be made once a week or once a month or whatever it is, what you could do for, one post a week, you could set aside one day, maybe as a team, and maybe with a social media manager or without, whatever it is batch your content. So you come up with a heap of ideas one week, and then the next week you film them or you create the content all together. That's the one job we all have together to do this. And then you've got X amount of months worth of content. You could send it off to an editor if you film stuff and they could edit it, whatever the setup you have going on, and you've batched your content and you don't have to worry about it, and it can be all scheduled out and posted and job done. Again, that could be evergreen content, all those things. So that's number 2. The third one you could do is ads. And if you're feeling like organic content is just a slog, which it is. It's a free slog, but it's a slog nonetheless. It can take many years for that organic content to gain some traction, to find that audience and perpetually grow in a way that is just compounding. So each and every year you might get that bigger audience and that bigger extra reach as a result, and it compounds and compounds and compounds like compound interest. That can take time. But that is brand building in essence, is building your audience, building your customer base bigger and bigger every year, and using that cadence to grow and grow and grow your cash flow, create more, product or service or whatever it is, and then grow. Same principle. But ads are kind of like the cheat code it's like an investment injection from a VC firm to help you get your message out there. So if you have the capital, you have some cash flow going that you can put into some paid ads, to pay to play basically, on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, TikTok even, Google ads, just to get your brand front and center. You can target it to the location you're in, to a certain demographic. You can test different audiences with different ads. These are things you should be talking to a social media manager for, not someone like me in this case. I do understand this stuff, but these are the kinds of people that you should be going to next. Social media team that knows how to run paid ads, especially if you do an e-commerce site, because you can tie that to return on ad spend and see the financial return on investment against a sale, especially for a cart sale in your Shopify site or something like that. But that can create greater reach much quicker than organic can. So there's 3 ideas: evergreen content, batching your content, and paid ads, on top of the criteria that we needed to go through of, if it's not working for you, then asking someone in your team. And then from there, if that's all not working, is engaging with a social media team. In terms of that social media team, it's probably likely going to be a retainer type setup where you engage with them on a monthly basis for a monthly fee, whatever the package inclusions are. That depends on what the price is going to be. And creating that consistent relationship, I think, is a good investment. You see it like an extension of your team. It's like having another employee or a couple of employees, depending on the size of their team. And you can find one-person operations, or maybe some teams that are 2 to 5 people are a good kind of agency to go with if you are at a small business size. And investing that money on your marketing promotion. I think I've talked about this in a previous episode as well. How much should you spend? The general par amount based on revenue to spend on your marketing promotion is between 5 and 10%. I'm pretty sure that's what I said in that episode, but it's about 5 to 10% on your yearly revenue. If you can put that aside and invest that into your marketing promotion, that's going to help you get your brand out there. And that could be on something like social media. You could go all in on it, or you could spread it out. You could still do some TV, or you could do some radio, you could do some print, you could do a billboard, depending on what kind of business you have, just to get your brand out there, to stay top of mind, to be aware, improve consideration for your product or your service, and engage with you further and buy again, especially if they've bought before. They know who you are and they've tried your product, just to be reminded, buy us again. Why not try us again? Things like that. So that's where social media can come in as a real good need and can deliver an ROI positive result, both monetarily and psychologically. I do hope that helps you, Michelle, in terms of answering your question there. And for those of you listening, thanks again for your, firstly, thanks again for your question, Michelle. But for those of you listening, I do hope that might help you too. In the meantime, please take a piece of brand candy, my free resource guide to do better branding that you can get on your way out at g'dayfrank.com/candy. As always, you can also make an appointment via that link if you have a brand related ailment. You can ask a question that you'd like some help with, and I'll see you at the next appointment in my next episode. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening. The surgery is now closed. The Dr. Branding Podcast is hosted by Reagan Frank McCrill, that's me, and for legal reasons I want to be clear that I am not a registered or qualified doctor. The premise for this podcast is that it is a satirical analogy for branding consultancy to help others with their brand success. This podcast is also sponsored by my branding business, G'day Frank. Say g'day today by booking a call with me at g'dayfrank.com.